And hello, everybody. Welcome on into another night of Crunchy Conservative podcast action here tonight on YouTube. I'm Adam Thompson, and tonight I have a different co-host, basically. Please welcome TikTok content creator Drew Koelher, or Drew Breaks News, as some of you know. He is a TikTok conservative content creator, probably somebody who was one of the first people I followed on TikTok, actually, when I made a TikTok. So you came up on my For You page, and I heard Drew Breaks the News, and you talked about news and just like very good, quick things that, boom, something would register in my head, and I would look it up and kind of keep me a little bit more informed about what else was happening besides like COVID stuff and everything. So, Drew, welcome on in. I'm very excited to be here. For those of you wondering where Weston is out sick. He got the COVID, unfortunately. So he gets to deal with that. I dealt with that last week. So I'm good now. I'm feeling fine. This is the best that I've felt it feels like a little while. But, Drew, obviously COVID has swept the nation pretty hard, and it's made pretty much content creation something a little bit different because of all the things that they're that TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, pretty much anybody's trying to basically flag and treat as misinformation sometimes. How has your content been going in terms of how TikTok just looks at it?
Yeah, fair. I would also like to say, we're having this dark winter because we were wished it by our current sitting president. So it's been nice. It's been a nice, painful, dark winter so far. So I look forward to the rest of it. The COVID thing has been very interesting over the last 2 years. Has been very difficult for a lot of people, understandably. And I think one thing that people can agree on, probably, depending on what side that they're on, is that at the beginning of this, a lot of us were having to find information on what was going on because there was a lot of stuff that was not being talked about, questions that were not being answered, and there was a lot of miscommunication. And initially it felt like perhaps people were trying to keep everybody calm and not spread a panic, so maybe not giving out a lot of information there. And then it just led to a lot of confusion. I don't know if you remember, people were telling people to take their groceries, leave them in outside or in the garage for like 2 or 3 hours to sanitize before bringing them into their home. I mean, this is the level of information that was getting out there. And I had family members that were doing that, initially, because we all were relatively concerned about, hey, this is a new thing that's coming. So I think rightfully so, everybody's, eyes and ears opened up, and we're like, okay, what do we do? How do we handle this? And I'll get to answering your question. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be too long-winded.
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay, thank you. So everybody's asking, what do we do? What do we do? And more information comes out, and then as people began asking questions, what we saw was if people dissented from what was being said, if somebody was like, hey, person A said this, but this doesn't sound right, it doesn't make sense, and say I posted something on Facebook at the time or on a different social media platform, and that platform then flagged that information or downright just removed the information, certainly the visuals of what was presented to us was that we shouldn't be allowed to be like commenting and like asking questions and like sharing, even like, how you would share medical, maybe not medical information, but like people when they get together, they share like, oh, this type of soup really helped to soothe my throat. I recommend try this soup if you like this for a sore throat. And that type of information. And then once that sort of information started to get questioned or flagged or taken down as well, where it was more anecdotal stuff, people were talking about like, oh, I had it wasn't so bad, or I had it, like all of the information at that point we got bombarded with so much different information that no one was able to really make a good, clear decision. It was hard for them and for their families. And now we're at the point with social media where we're seeing people posting the information that may be accurate, but because it comes from source A or source B, it's no longer like viable information. For example, there's been it seems to be a big outcry over Dr. Malone and Peter McCullough appearing on the Joe Rogan show. 200 and something doctors have written some sort of a letter to get Joe Rogan barred from public speaking or get his podcast banned or something because these 270 doctors. Now, I don't know how many doctors there are in this country. I think there's probably more than like 300, like maybe more than 1,000 doctors out there. Maybe even more than that. I don't know. We have a pretty big country. But a small group of people, like this is the meta of all of this. A small group of people with a loud enough voice seem to be able to influence the decisions of big companies. And this is a problem because if that information is being restricted in some ways, maybe it's a competitor's information, maybe it's a different business or something, but their information is also being like, where do we draw the line of what we're allowed to talk about, and who ultimately gets to make that decision? And it's not me. I don't get to make that decision. I don't control Facebook or Meta or TikTok. I don't have an input on that. Like, what do you think? Like, what should we be focused on when it comes to these feelings of frustration?
Well, it's been quite interesting because we saw kind of a change in how social media was going to be really treated in 2016, like 2015, 2016, when Trump was really gaining speed. Now, a lot of people got on the Trump and really involved with politics because of Trump. Like, they started paying attention more, I think. And I think that created kind of some, in every single group of people out there, there's always that very tiny percentage that are not the people you want to particularly get out there and speak and share their opinions. There are some people, in my opinion, in any society that just take things too far. Like, there's always going to be that in society. Do I believe in it? No. Are they allowed to have that opinion? Yes. That's their God-given right to do that. So we saw in 2016 just how like Twitter was operating. Like, TikTok did not exist at this point yet. Like, we were still on Vine in 2015, and none of this ever existed. There was no politics on Vine or anything, which was very interesting. It was really just memes. That's all it was for. And then TikTok came out after Vine shut down, and all these social media companies just really, to me, really laid the hammer on censorship. Like, when Donald Trump was banned on Twitter on January, what was it, January 6th, 7th, 8th, at some point in that time frame. Yeah. It really started a chain reaction of pretty much like, if they can do that to the president, they can 100% do it to me. Like, straight up. If they can do that to a sitting president at that point in time, that's insanity to me. And I think there needs to be some consequences. I think social media companies need to be held liable for some of this stuff that's happened in this country. I think they need to be liable for what happened at the Capitol on January 6th, because they pretty much instigated that. I mean, there's a lot of proof, and a lot of people have come out and said, like, this is what they wanted. Like, they saw the whole destruction of Trump and everything on January 6th, and that was their idea. Like, if we've spread this violence and everything, and then just to ban him, so he can't even get the word out. He can't even put something on social media that might prove something along what happened on that day. So January 6th was a really nightmarish day for a lot of people. I think a lot of conservatives were I think we were all upset pretty much, except maybe the group that was going up there, and with just January 6th passing and everything, it changed the way that social media worked at that point. From the time Trump became elected to the time Trump was thrown out of office, it really ramped up entirely.
Yeah.
So
well, I think, if I may, I don't hold Trump guilt-free for what happened on January 6th. Like, in my opinion, I understand. I've heard, I think, everybody's side of this, and I know that there's just no way that people are gonna all agree on it, and that's fine. But I think that there was enough of a fervor amongst Trump supporters, and I'm not even going to say Republicans. What I really want to focus on is those who truly, like, who went to the Capitol, either to celebrate because Trump was going to win and they thought he was going to win, so they were there to kind of party on the Capitol and have a celebration. But I think that some of the rhetoric and some of the fervor around the election previous, and a lot of the there's still a lot of unanswered questions that people have about the election. And to me, it seems I don't hear about, like, I never heard, and this is just me as a layman person, I've never heard a resolve or what the answer was for the jump in the vote counts, how they've tried to explain what the claim of votes being stolen from Trump given to Biden or vice versa. I've never heard anyone come out and explain it to the people and say, look, like, we understand, like, you feel like this election was stolen. We understand, like, the other side, no, it was free and fair or whatever. Every time somebody else wins, everybody complains anyway. It doesn't matter. Every election is stolen from the other party every year, every election cycle for the last 100-something years. You know what I mean? Like, it's an outrage and everybody's mad. But I do think that there were things that Trump and some of the people around Trump, specifically those like Sidney Powell, General Flynn, at the time Lin Wood, total wacko guy in my opinion, but a lot of people were listening to this, and a lot of people were believing that the election was being stolen away from the people. So the people that were on the Capitol, those who were, I think that were a little bit more aggressive, at least, were feeling like our government was being stolen away, and there were things that Trump and some of those in his ilk that could have done, I think, to at least to calm some of that. But again, we could talk January 6th to death, but people are going to have their own opinions on it.
Yeah, I mean, what happened, and that's the unfortunate part. And I never would have thought in my lifetime that we would have seen anything like that.
Sure.
And I get the frustrations. I understand the frustrations. Like, I felt really upset about the entire election because, in my opinion, something happened, and we may never know. We will probably never ever know unless somebody just exposes everything. Like,
once a generation passes away, the CIA will release all of the data, and so that no way, oh, look at what those idiots did 50, 60 years ago. Haha, they were so stupid. Let's expose them now when it doesn't matter. I mean, that's what happens that's why they haven't released the JFK stuff. They're not going to, because there are people that are still alive today that would be massively implicated if they do finally release all the records.
Well, and of course, some of those people definitely are involved with Jeffrey Epstein in this whole thing, and that whole mess of a situation that's happening in court. Obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted on her charges, and I don't, like, I remember post 9/11 quite a lot. Like, I somewhat have flashbacks to 9/11, but I've never seen such aggressiveness from people in my entire life. And
in what way aggressive? In what sense? Like, compared to the post 9/11?
So, like, 9/11 happened, and there was a lot of people torn about going to war and everything. I don't think it did a whole lot of unifying. I think everybody understood the tragedy, and I think everybody respected the tragedy, and really just, like, because our country was attacked. But then we went to war, and then all this information came out. Okay, this is kind of, I I'm a pro-military person, but I hate the idea of war because we've
Sure.
seen what war can really do to a country and really do to people. Like, if we could have no wars for the rest of the time, I don't think anybody would complain, in my opinion. And I respect military so much because of the sacrifices that they make. But the time we spent in Afghanistan was obviously too long. But, like, even people who were torn in this country about the war and everything, it wasn't so nearly as bad as we saw with January 6th, with Donald Trump as president, and people being able to do it online. I think I've seen a lot more sickness and darkness online, particularly than after 9/11 and both the Bush era. Like, I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Yeah.
And people who I know are saying the same thing, who are older, who, like, remember Bush Gore and how bad of an election that really became, like how nightmare of an election it became to get Bush, and basically Bush was president. The Bill Clinton days and the and Watergate happening, like, people were so, like, we've been through a lot of divide, but I don't think we have ever been this divided on things. Like, it seems like everything is like, you either do this or you do this, and it's an even split, and people are pissed off at each other.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I agree that we are right now in this country probably more divided than we've ever been, because if you're either on one side or the other of the election, and you're kind of like on one side of or the other of this pandemic. There are and then there's all of the other little facets and factions in between. You have the school board stuff, you have critical race theory, you have there are so many other other factions of divisiveness where it makes money to confuse people, and it makes money to keep people torn and separated. And I think that what social media has discovered and what it has allowed to happen in this country is you can say all of the things and face zero of the consequences. And the consequences that they do try to impose, i.e., blocking people, taking down accounts or whatever, those are no match for real life consequences. Real life consequences for running your mouth and being a racist is to get your teeth knocked out. Yeah. Real life consequences for, being a hateful person and mistreating somebody is to fight. Or at a minimum, we socially outcast those people that don't fit into our system, right? So back 100 years ago, you have a town or a small neighborhood of people, and every neighborhood, I'm 41 years old. I grew up in the suburbs. We had neighborhoods. Every neighborhood I lived in had a house with people that we were like, we don't associate with the people in that house. They were kind of creepy, or there were stories about maybe some weird touchy stuff, or I don't, it doesn't matter, but there was always a house that had people that the society at large, community at large, didn't really associate with because they had weird ideas. They didn't fit in with everyone else, and we just we made friends with those that were more like-minded than us. But what social media has done is it has given a voice to all of the people that back in the day would have been outcasted. We wouldn't have been listening to those people because they were crazy people. But now social media has allowed them to have followings. It's given them fandom. It's given them a relevant voice in today, to speak into our lives. And quite frankly, we don't know how to. We're too young into the social media experience as a country and as a species to know how to deal with those. So we're seeing the weirdos, but we're not like, do we like respond back to them? Do we ignore it? Like just block them? Like, and we don't have parents that are teaching their kids how to properly respond too. So it's like you got a kid that's following some crazy wacko people on social media. Well, if you as a parent aren't involved in what's going on, like it's no different than like your kid saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to this weird culty thing back in the 90s. I'm going to go to this weird culty church retreat where we're going to drink blood. Is that cool, Mom?" Like, no, that's not cool. But nowadays, all of our kids are getting imprinted with ideas that we would have normally said, "Hey, as a society, we're not cool with this dialogue," but we don't have the same tools to deal with it right now.
Yeah. One of the things I think that's interesting about content creation right now is basically at some point in time there's going to be several different figures in every community. I've seen this happen on Twitch. I've seen this happen on YouTube. You have those figures who are like the father figures, like Dr. Lupo on Twitch. He is somebody that people call Twitch's dad because he's somebody who's a dad. You know, he will always be nice. He'll always be open-minded, always caring, like somebody kids can look up to. And really, like I grew up in a traditional home. I felt like my parents stayed together. My parents didn't go through a divorce or anything. And you see divorce more often, especially like 35 to 45. There's a lot of divorce in that time, in that age group. And so like my parents and I grew up in a very traditional home. Like we watched news every night. Like my parents kept me informed, like, and taught me right from wrong. Like I am very black and white. There are some things, there's a little gray I've learned in life. Like there's always going to be some grayness somewhere, but most of the time it's black or white for me. And I'm seeing kind of today, parents are just kind of just letting their kids do their thing and not checking on them and kind of talking with them and like making them kind of think about life and like question things about like, hey, I heard this news story, and then talking about it with your parents and like getting their viewpoint, because a lot of parents I think are very right down the middle. Like that's how my parents were. They're financially conservative and pretty moderate, like progressive, like things need to change, but I don't want to pay for like a ton of these social programs. Like, okay, that makes sense. Like I feel like a lot of people are like that in this country, and I'm seeing a lot more liberal parents come out now because the people who are coming up are millennials who were pretty much, a lot of them went to liberal arts colleges and either got we're in political science classes and like we're getting indoctrined by colleges and universities, like hearing these ideas, like these crazy ideas. And I think we're seeing a lot more radical left liberal ideas starting to come out and being parents. And so now we're getting a full generation full of just radicals almost, it seems like.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing that I think is at least comforting, that statistically speaking, liberals are not having children at the rate that conservative families are having children. And when I say conservative, I mean I would consider myself to be a conservative, but by no means would I consider myself to be a Republican. And so I want to differentiate. When we're talking about conservative values, pro-life, and pro-family, pro-nuclear family, and stuff like that. So So I think that we statistically are the churches that I go to are filled with couples my age and younger that have like 4 or 5 kids.
Wow.
It is significantly large, but what's happening, I think, is you're going to see a shift, because a lot of these young adults and kind of coming up in politics and stuff like that, talking heads and everything, they're coming from very interesting family backgrounds. And what I think is what is going to happen is that the truth always wins. At the end of the day, the truth always wins. The truth always comes out. It always wins. It'll always stay the truth, no matter how much people try to manipulate it. So people that are conservative, raising big families, are instilling those same values into their kids, and then those kids, which will be lots of them in the next 50 years, will start becoming adults, and we're going to see. I think we're going to see a big pendulum swing again.
Hmm.
Probably 30, 40 years down the road from now. So at the end of the day, we still live in a great country. Most of us are still pretty safe and healthy. Like everything has been a really big eye-opening experience for us, but I think we're prevailing. I think most people would say that they're prevailing.
Hmm. Oh, I 100% agree. I mean, I live in a town full of 80,000 people, and like, you know, and plus we have Governor Nome whose state of the state address was pretty much where we didn't lock down. I'm a hero. I'm not a big fan of her right now. Her and I are not on the we're not seeing eye to eye on a particular issue because of how it's very hypocritical, and we talked about this. Wesley and I have talked about this on this podcast before. So, but she didn't lock down our state, and so we had to keep going. Even though
Right.
for a lot of businesses, like they lost a lot of money in this town, and
Hmm.
we strive on local business. Myself, we had to steer waters, very shaky waters. We got through it, and as an event-based business too, like there was nothing happening pretty much during 2020, so we kind
Yeah.
of had to just make do and just kind of just like do our own thing and figure out what we were going to do, and we survived and we're back in it. So
Yeah. That's
um
great, man.
and that's the wonderful thing about living in communities like this, because we all will all help each other, and at some point like things are just everything's fine here. Like it's a good mixture of people. It's a very conservative town though, like
That's
it's
good.
quite conservative. But you have places like LA and New York that are not, that are highly left liberal radicalism,
Yeah.
and they're adopting those ideas now, which is very nerve wracking. I mean, we almost saw the defunding of police in Minneapolis. That we can agree it has problems, but defunding it was not the solution. And luckily that vote got flipped, and people actually went, wait a minute, no, we need the police after we've had the highest record of homicides
Yeah, and I think that
ever.
there's a couple other states that have followed suit, had very similar experiences where
Hmm.
they've realized that an unmotivated police force is not going to do the policing. Now, I think that I think we should talk about police. People should be having conversations about maybe having different opinions on policing and training
Hmm.
emphases. I was a cop. I was a cop in the Navy for 20 years. I do believe that law enforcement is necessary, but I do think that law enforcement, in some ways, could be revamped and reformed to look
Hmm.
like different things. And I get the sentiment. Like we don't want to send in guidance counselors to gunfights. Like you have specific police officers. We have them for good reasons. If there's a shootout or there's like a hostage situation, by all means, I think those men need to be trained and necessary. But
Hmm.
I'm also of the ilk of saying I don't think traffic tickets are that
That
great of a
important.
thing. Yeah, I think we could get rid of traffic tickets.
I've known a lot of cops my entire life. Like when I was a child, I lived across the street from the captain of the sheriff's department, and one of my good buddies in school, his dad was a cop, and so like I was around pretty much like military cops. Like and at one point in time, I lived right next door to a Seventh Circuit judge. So if
Nice.
I got in trouble, like they could do a house call. That's how quick that would go for
Right.
a lot of people. And they were the nicest people on earth. Like and for me, I kind of understood that these guys don't have an easy job. Like especially the sheriff and law enforcement. Your job's not easy. It's probably a job that I would never sign up for because of like I'm sorry, I can't picture myself putting my life like that on the line every night. And I know several cops today who are very very awesome people,
Yeah.
and they're nice, and like I have never had an issue with a cop, and I've been pulled over. I've been I have been in handcuffs before. I'll admit it on this podcast that I've been in handcuffs before, but not once did I feel like I was in life or death situation because I was calm myself. I knew what I did. I had a guilty conscience. I knew what I did, and and so like and I was very nice. Like I'm the type of person that if I see a cop do a Yui on the main road, I will immediately pull over because I will look down at my speedometer and go, yep, he's pulling me over, and I'll immediately pull over. Just like make it easy for him because that way everybody just goes home and everybody's happy and nothing happens to anybody else. Like that's at the end of the day, I think that's what every cop wants. And what we're seeing is a mass exodus of cops, and those good cops are leaving these bigger cities and coming to towns like mine. And you know, and I've never had a run-in with a bad cop here. I know some people will say differently, but it also depends on the situation, you know.
There are. I think there are going to be natural consequences for some of these cities. That, for example, Seattle. I lived in Washington for 6 years before I ended up coming out to Missouri, and when I moved to Washington in 2013, it was wonderful to take my family across the Sound and go down into Seattle and see how, you know, really nice and classic the town is. Very, you know, Seattle is in movies. You know, you want to go to Pike's Place. You want to see where the fish are thrown across. You know, it's a very cool experience. But by the time that I left, and I left in 2019. I didn't feel safe going down. Like I remember my dad coming to visit, and he wanted to go to Pike's Place again, and I said, well, you know, we can go, but it's a little bit different now. And we go, and you know, you have to walk through cities of homeless people. Like, and I'm not even exaggerating. I mean, they are cities built that these people, like, it's like Chaz, but it's all over the place, and there's these homeless encampments everywhere. There's a wonderful documentary I recommend people watching. It's called Seattle is Dying, and it discusses a lot of the same problems that other cities are experiencing with this this liberal kind of democratic, like, you can commit crime and you can, you know, like, we're here to give you free needles. It's like you can do drugs. You can basically commit any crime in the city of Seattle, in Portland, Oregon, in LA, and get away with it really multiple times. There was a gentleman that was interviewed in that Seattle is Dying documentary who was also a part of the riots in Seattle right before the election, so 2019, and he died. But he was like a multiple time convicted criminal. He was on so many drugs, and he bragged about the amount of crime that he could commit because he knew that he could get away with it. That's what's happening. This is the natural progression. And as police officers, as you said, exodus these big cities and come to these small towns, the cities will eat themselves. I mean, that's just what's going to happen until someone comes in, like, what was the New York guy that was, he was Trump's guy for a little bit. He's a lawyer, but he was the mayor of New York. Giuliani. Yeah. Giuliani. Like, when Giuliani came in, like, regardless of what you think of his exploits and what kind of a person he is, he made New York amazing. And, like, I remember when Giuliani was in office, people wanted to go to New York. Yeah, there was always still crazy stuff happening, but it was it was a beautiful city. They got rid of a lot of the homelessness. People felt they could walk and spend money in New York. That was huge. Everybody wanted to go to New York, and now New York is really just a big pile of
Nobody wants to go.
No, it's terrible. I wouldn't want to go. And people can never leave. It's a prison.
Yeah, and I can say I've been in New York, and who was mayor at that point? I can't remember. It was when I was, like, going my freshman year of high school, so this would have been 9 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
Like, oh my Lord.
It was probably around the time I was there. I was there in, like, 2012, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was about that time. And I mean, it was cool and all, but like, I just wanted to leave. Like, I had a date,
Right.
and I was like, I
It's
kind
way more
of,
cool on TV and in the movies than it is in real
yeah.
life. Yeah, for
You gotta
sure.
walk everywhere, and it's
Yeah,
traffic everywhere, and it's people. And I'm not a big people person. Like, I
I'm
don't
not
like
either.
being in huge crowds. Like, it's just like
Same.
Times Square was awful.
Yeah.
Was awful to go through. But I mean, going to the Today Show, I mean, there's cool things in New York, but I wouldn't go back. I
Yeah, I
wouldn't
wouldn't
go
either.
back at all. Like maybe for an event, but that's really it. Like, and that event better be really worth it for me to get on an airplane and go to New York. So I want to move on
Sure.
to the 2024 election because I think a lot of people are really concerned about the 2024 election because we're going to start seeing campaign ads run now. Like basically from this point forward, we're going to start seeing
Sure.
campaign ads
I
because
think that's
primaries are
fair.
coming up.
Yeah.
So, um, has there really been anybody like in you're in Missouri, correct, right now?
Yeah, I'm in Missouri.
Yeah. So, is there really anything that's popping out to you in terms of the politics in Missouri? Like, what is kind of like people in
Mm,
Missouri feeling like right now? Is it feeling red? Is it feeling blue? Are we yellow?
sure.
What is
Well,
Missouri doing?
I'll tell you, I'm very proud of our state. We abortion is illegal in Missouri, which is awesome. Our Second
Hmm.
Amendment rights are kept very free here, with no infringement from the federal government. So Mike Parsons and the rest of the crew in Missouri have been doing really good. Eric Schmidt is the Attorney General here. He's been doing awesome things with the vaccine mask mandate stuff.
Hmm.
He's been very involved with. There was a local restaurant that got shut down over the mask stuff. He's been very involved with that. Um, and I think in comparison to some other states, like I have family that lives in Ohio. I'm from Cleveland originally, but Ohio is very afraid of COVID. They're very, I think, and normally they're kind of one of those states that could go blue or red, but I
Hmm.
think that they're very blue. Excuse me. I think they're very blue right now, and I think that they're going to lean just because of the COVID handling, and so many people are afraid that they're not going to be willing to give back, like they're not going to be willing to take back their own like freedom to be like, oh, we're not going to do this stuff again. So I think Ohio's
Hmm.
going to stay blue. But anyway, so I man, I want to when I as I look forward to politics from this point on, I feel like I was very zoned in, kind of like what you said. A lot of people, because of Trump, a lot of people started to pay attention to politics. Now, admittedly, I was one of those guys, and I was on the Trump train for a very long time.
Hmm.
Uh, Almost, I would say, I mean, just some sometimes just radically so. I just um, I thought Trump was going to like drain the swamp. I legit thought like that was the key piece for me is I thought, well, we're gonna see people getting booted out of their positions. We're gonna see like Hillary getting arrested. I felt like that was what was gonna happen. And then when it didn't, I had to take a step back. And so where I'm at right now is like if I'm gonna play a part into politics anymore. I want
Hmm.
to do it from the angle of comedy. I want to do it from the angle of humor, which is why you've probably noticed a shift in my news going from more just like headline, headline, headline to like a headline and commentary that's ridiculous and it's supposed to be a joke and it's supposed to make people laugh. Like,
Hmm.
I want people to laugh at politics because I think that class, the political class, doesn't care about me and you. They don't care about the guys and the gals that are sweating and working and doing the things that make this country move and function. The truck drivers, the factory workers, like
Hmm.
those of us that have to earn a living to survive. I don't think the political class cares. So in 2022, going into 2024, I'm not going to go into it in the sense of, oh, who's going to make my life better? I'm going to go into it I want to be as honest about how good or bad this is going to be for everyone across the board. And because until we see real reform politically, until we see this two-party system, which I think should be dismantled, or at least opened up for more parties with more viability and more funding, I think the Libertarian Party should have a very equal voice in this, and I don't think that it does. I think other parties as well. I think the money needs to come out of politics. So with all of that being said, I think Ron DeSantis is a great candidate for the Republican Party. I think if he runs, he will win. And I don't say that because I think that all of his policies are great. All a presidency is, guys, anymore is a popularity contest, and it really just depends on those that are in the middle that aren't like really hardcore like Democrat or hardcore Republican. Those are the ones that kind of shift the ballots in one direction or the other. So the fight will be won based off of presentation. And I think DeSantis presents very well. I think he's well spoken. He doesn't go on Twitter rants. He doesn't speak ill of people that he for no reason, that he has a celebrity beef with. I mean, these are all things that Trump could have really just chilled out about during his presidency, right? Like, okay, we get it. You were the apprentice guy, but now that you're the president, let's be, president. Let's not take the celebrity beef stuff. And I think that's what happened is we're now at the point where we're going to be voting for the next celebrity. And Joe Biden was the result of Trump, just like Trump was the result of Obama, and Obama was the result of Bush. It's just failure on top of failure on top of failure, and we get this ridiculous caricature of the other side every time. So we got Obama, who was a ridiculously Democratic caricature. Then we got Trump, who was an over-the-top Republican caricature. So, I mean, my hope is that we just get a normal person.
Yeah,
I want a president that nobody even remembers is the president. Like, that would, can you imagine how great that would be as a country to like have people be like, I don't even know who the president is, but life is okay. Like, life is good, and I don't know who's running this place, but I'm pretty happy. Like, we're all so distracted because of Biden or Trump. Like, it's so ridiculous.
I mean, that was the 1920s, and we need that was the 1920s because probably I think there was a study at one point in time that I read when I was in high school, when we were talking about this time period in the 1920s, and they were like, yeah, these three presidents were the most useless presidents we have seen because nobody remembers them. They didn't do a whole lot, and one of them vacationed in South Dakota a lot. So.
Dude, and that's great. And you know what? There's nothing that you probably can go back into the history and look at some of the policies and stuff that changed, and probably not a lot. And it was probably because America was doing okay, and we didn't need this fake division being perpetrated by every left, right, here, there. Doesn't matter, man. We're inundated everywhere.
We are. And if there's maybe one other person I would say to bring into the conversation that should run, and I think not from a Democrat standpoint, she ran as a Democrat, but her views have have changed quite a lot. Tulsi Gabbard is somebody who if she would have been the nominee for the Democrats, I maybe would have voted for her because I rather disagree on some like other issues, but not the big ones. Like
she's very level-headed. She was very well spoken.
She was smart, military, woman, minority. Like, she was a Democrat's dream, a liberal dream right there for presidency. Like, so many, victim minority boxes for them. And then for a lot of other people, military background, somebody who was well respected in the Navy, and she just spoke very, very professionally. I was like, This is not a bad option. This is not a bad option. And then, of course, DNC said, okay, we're changing the rules on how debates work, and she was booted off the stage, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's all theater, man. I mean, they don't really want someone like her to be speaking publicly to people because she's not willing to... Now, there are some things so I'm going to just straight up say I think Tulsi Gabbard is absolutely bought out by Pfizer. So just my opinion on it, like from what I've seen, she is she doesn't want to talk vaccine, but she'll talk about these other therapeutics that are coming out. And I'm like, look, you have to have a conversation. Like, either big pharma is in fact doing some terrible things in this country, or they're not. And I think that like we need to go back to 2010 when we were all in agreement that like big pharma sucked, and we had Pharma Bro, the guy that was like, was it insulin he was trying to charge people like a ridiculous amount of money for, or something, or EpiPens, I don't even know what it was. It was something crazy.
It was ridiculous.
And everybody in the world was like, yeah, cool, we hate pharma too. Like, screw them, screw the guys on Wall Street. Like, let's, get the power back in the hands of the people. All of those people have disappeared. I don't know where they are anymore, but they don't exist on social media, because everybody is either all for pharma, or they're just kind of like figuring out that pharma's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are kind of, it's kind of unique. This society is just it's so unique. I talk to people from England and from like Europe, and they're going, dude, what the hell is happening in the United States? It's like, this is what happens when you have so many different viewpoints about everything, and people now can talk about it freely and openly. If you do that in any of these other countries, it doesn't work like that. They don't get the same kind of society like we do. And
that's why when people say how is what is happening to Australia, how is that happening? Because they don't have freedom to talk about it. They don't have this ability like you and I to do this. They would be flagged, and there would be a constable at yours and my door tomorrow because of this conversation.
Exactly.
Questioning the narrative, questioning, what's really going on, and what should I really be concerned about.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I would like to say we're seeing places like England kind of wake up a little bit. I mean, they're kind of I don't know which way England is going right now. Internationally, like, the world just seems so upside down because of COVID. COVID ruined so much for the world.
Right.
And I think whoever wins this 2024 election, the first thing that they need to do is find out the origins of this. Where did this come from? Why did this happen? Like, let's figure that out first, so we can maybe adjust something in how we handled this from now on. If it was gain of function research, okay, let's stop doing that then. Okay.
Yeah, because at this point, like, do we even really know? Because there's talk about it coming from gain of function stuff, but then there's also the other side that is saying, well, look, SARS-CoV, those types of infections have been around. Coronaviruses have been around for centuries. So the question is then, why are we treating this one differently? Because we had swine flu, we've had H1N1, there was the Zika virus, which was pretty recent. It's like all of these were big, major knee-jerk reactions, but they all dissipated really quickly. Why are we still in this one when the indicators are that it is not very much different than any of the other coronaviruses that we've had?
Well, if you remember, it was either swine flu or H1N1. I can't remember which one it was, but it was more targeted for kids. Like, it was going after like middle schoolers and high schoolers really aggressively. Did we shut down the schools? No, I didn't get one day off of school. We didn't go to online learning. We were in school every damn day that year.
Yeah.
None of us locked down.
And they made it sound like it was still pretty bad, man. Like, it wasn't like, I mean, people were freaking out about that too.
People were freaking out, but we never went to that extent ever.
Right.
Like, we never wore a single mask in school. Like, the bully would pick his nose and put in my ear. Like, we were still doing that.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously somebody is going to replace Biden at the end of 2024. By the time the 2024 election comes around, I don't think he survives. But guess what? He's back tomorrow with another beautiful press conference. It was announced today that he will be back on the mic tomorrow, reading obviously a scripted teleprompter that he still can't read, and then call on certain reporters and then go back to a slumber.
Yeah, there's nothing about anything that he says anymore that I listen to. And if there is something that he's going to say that's important, I'll pick it up on a soundbite. I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to waste. I think a lot of people feel that same way. Even those that voted for him at this point, they're just like, I'm not going to. Well, I mean, look, even though I voted for Trump, I rarely watched his own press conferences. So
Yep.
I don't think that many people really care. It'll be used as talking points for conservative and liberal content creators tomorrow. There'll be those praising him. There'll be those, disenfranchising. But what has he really said that has made an impact on anybody? I've yet to see anything. And if it even happens, we'll find out.
No, I mean, he'll just stand up there, look like angry grandpa for a little bit if he gets real close to that microphone of his, and then he's going to go back to sleep. He's going to take his night-night medicine from his nurse in the background. So
yeah, I don't know how many more episodes of Weekend at Bernie's that I can watch, but I'm feeling pretty done with it.
I can't stand it. I'm with you. I cannot watch 5 minutes of it before I'm just like, is somebody actually just letting this happen? Like, I just literally question myself every time I watch something Joe Biden says. I'm like, is somebody actually, like, who thought this was a good idea in the first place? Like, well, how did we get here?
I feel like this. So I try to look at this from like other countries' perspectives. Like, I don't know how the rest of the world looks at us, but with Biden and Trump together, like, over the course of the last, 6 years now total, we've had to deal with just nonsense from both. I just don't know what the rest of the country, like, if I was a propagandist in another country and that hated America, I would have had my life's work completed in the last 6 years because I think we look weak. I don't know that anybody is looking at America as a country in the same way that it looked at it, say, Kennedy, Reagan. We had actually specifically with Reagan, like, you can look back at his presidency and see the Berlin Wall fall down. Like, you see these big historic events that were peaceful. Like, they were not. What we're going to see for Trump and Biden is riots and frustration for the course of the whole time. And it's like, what did they accomplish? Where are we? How are we any better in 2024 than we were in 2016? And not saying that Hillary would have made it better. I don't believe that either. I think they're both goons. They're all goons.
They're all goons. Yeah, my dad says that all the time. Like, in basically that kind of line. We're getting to the end of the NFL season. COVID obviously running rampant, and luckily no playoff games have been canceled. I just want to make a really good point. The only thing that never canceled in 2020, 2021, or it's not gonna, and it's never gonna cancel, is motorsports. They had a race everywhere in the world basically. In the United States, in NASCAR and IndyCar, they ran a race pretty much everywhere in the United States. Not one single problem, so good on them. But the NFL is coming up with the Super Bowl. LA's new regulations on health and everything, the rumor is that they're only allowing 20% capacity for the Super Bowl.
Well, who can afford a Super Bowl ticket? Can you?
No, luckily I could not. But now they're thinking about moving the Super Bowl to Dallas.
Sure. Well, it makes sense.
Going to Jerry World. I mean, it does. They're at 100% capacity in restaurants and pretty much everywhere. Is the NFL actually maybe somewhat turning around, or are they money driven right now?
Well, it's all money driven because you got to think, like, they're not concerned that only 20% of the people can come and experience this wonderful event that we are going to put on for them. Only 20. Oh, we should have full capacity because everybody will be blessed by our presence. Like, no, it's not that. It's like they want as many people that can possibly drink as many Bud Lights as they can in these stadiums and buy as much merch as possible. Like, that's the drive. And then they want all the networks to cover it as well. And see, this is where the COVID narrative fell apart with the NFL from the beginning. If you really think about the fact that the NFL's we had like one stadium completely locked down, no people. Then one
Yep.
stadium full of people, no one's wearing masks. Then there's another stadium, maybe half capacity. Like none of it made sense. Just like none of the mandates, none of the rules, state per state, made sense. And because money wasn't being driven in, it's going to take an organization that's as money hungry as the NFL and
Hmm.
businesses to make the statement that, hey guys, COVID's over. Like it's over and money needs to be made, and we're not going to get rich anymore if we keep pretending that COVID is still what we said it was 2 years ago. Like we've
Yep.
learned a lot in 2 years. We've come a long way, guys. It's time to
Hmm.
put the masks away unless you want to keep them. Get your vaccines if you want them because they're free and available, and let's go on with life. And I think
Yeah.
maybe that's what the NFL's trying to do here is saying, you know what, nah, we're gonna do, maybe we'll do a bigger capacity, so more people, so we can make more money, and
Yeah.
that's how capitalism works.
Money is money. Okay.
Money runs this country.
I like
Absolutely.
you want to live, you need money. That's just how it works. There is no other way right now. And you can earn it by working at McDonald's right now for $15 an hour. Okay, so yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm kind of glad that they're kind of considering that because anything to screw LA out of anything, I'm just all for. Just to
LA
continue
didn't
to
do
not.
anything to you, Adam. LA is
They
an
did.
inanimate object.
Hey, anytime I get to watch any sort of big liberal radical government just fail and just lose something, like it makes me happy.
Sure,
Like
I
because
think
of
that
what
something like
happened.
that happened in Oklahoma too. I think there was something that got switched out last year.
Mhm.
Oh, I don't remember what it was now, but there was something that was supposed to be held, but COVID kind of shut that down as well.
Ever
Uh,
since the MLB pulled the All Star game out of Atlanta for
mm,
their racist voter ID laws, I've been all for any
oh yeah.
time a liberal big city gets screwed out of a sporting event and it goes to a conservative place, like where they're gonna allow people to like have fun. Because, in all
Yeah.
honesty, that's what they want people to do. They don't want to have people come to the stadium and think about politics. They want people to come to the stadium, get drunk, and have
Right.
fun. Like that's what sports is.
Yeah.
That's I've never seen sports get so politicized, and it's also hitting the motorsports world, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm like, this no, this is where I come. This is my happy place. Like this is what I
Yeah.
watch to get away from all this. And in
Sure.
NASCAR, the "Let's Go Brandon" meme came
Right.
out because of NASCAR. Of all
Right.
sports, it had to be NASCAR. And now the "Let's Go Brandon" coin um, cryptocurrency was sponsoring the driver who now
Yeah, I heard about that.
potentially who won't get his sponsorship done.
Yeah.
So
Well, we live in a world where, there's a fake sense of morality out there, and it's like a religion now. It's
mhm.
you're either with us or against us. I think is kind of how a lot of the popular crowd goes now, and I think it's going to just fall flat on its face. I just don't
Yeah.
know that it's going to be maintainable. I just think that we're seeing kind of the end of it. I think 2024, unless we fix what we're like, we have to do something ourselves. We have to be the ones to say, you know what, I'm going to either let this affect my life and impact me forever,
Mhm.
or I'm going to look around me and I'm going to see the things that I've been blessed with that I can uh, gather around my friends and family that I love, that I know support me. And I can say that no matter who's in the White House or no matter like what's going on in the big city, I have the things that matter the most to me here and they're safe. And that's what life's going to be about for me. And I think more people wake up and realize that they're being played. Like we're all being played by the people in charge. If you make less than, gosh, $70,000, you're in the working class. You are being played by everybody else that's rich, by the
Mhm.
smaller group of people up there. So I think we should just stop giving them. We stop. My mom always said, just ignore it and it'll go away. And I feel like there's nothing more powerful than doing that with politics
Mhm.
today, or politicians that are ridiculous, is ignoring them and let them go away.
Yep, exactly. And hopefully this is where it starts happening, 2024. Primary start this year, basically. We're going to start seeing primary elections starting in as early as this year. I can't believe it. We're already we're at midterms this year, so that's primary season. So that's going to get very interesting to see what happens. And he's exactly right. Though, if you ignore them, they will go away eventually. It takes them a little. Sometimes it takes a while, but they'll go away. They're going to go away. Drew, thank you so much for joining me tonight. It's been
My
a complete
pleasure, man.
honor to have you here. Everybody who watches this tonight, make sure you go to his TikTok account at Real Drew Koehler.
But it's spelled like Kohler, so it's confusing. But you
It's
guys will
confusing.
figure it
Yeah.
out.
Just look up Drew Breaks the News and you'll find him. I
You
guarantee
should
it.
find that with that hashtag, yeah.
So he's a great content creator. 100% love his stuff. He comes up on my For You page all the time. Luckily, they're not. Luckily, the gods of TikTok not shadow banning you right now. So
It's been a while. I think I'm due another shadow banning coming up.
So thank you so much. And if you want to know 100 ways, 100 reasons why not to mess with this country, go to San Diego some point. See a quarter of the Navy fleet. It is absolutely massive, and that's something I always say. I'm going to say to people from now on. Don't. That should give you 100 reasons not to mess with us, because I've seen those warships, and that's a scary sight sometimes.
I've been on
Can
two of
imagine.
them, man. Spent many nights on board those. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Drew, have a good night, sir.
Thanks,
Enjoy
man.
the hopefully the year continues. We turn things start turning around. All right, things are going to turn around, and the light's finally going to shine through.
Amen.
So,
That's right, brother.
thank you everybody for watching the Country Conservative Podcast. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.
And he left, but I didn't, so I'm going to leave.